Now that we've addressed all the setbacks and deductions at the peak and the heel stand at the plate line, we can use the unit method to step off the common rafter. But first we have to figure out how to set up the square. And that's the use of this. This is called a miter rule or miter ruler. It is the corresponding unit run of the hip in this roof, octagon roof, for every 12 inches that the common rafter runs on the level. So this rectangle is 5 inches by 12 inches and the hypotenuse is 13 inches. And how to find this is fairly simple. In this instance though, if you take 360 degrees and divide it by 16, you would get the working angle. Now, how come I didn't divide it by 8? And the answer is the working angle is between the common rafter and the hip. Incidentally, way back in the old days, they took the earth as a circle and divided by the number of days, 360 days, and each day corresponded with 1 degree, and that's why fractions of a degree are minutes and seconds. But we're not using degrees, we're using lengths and connecting dots for the angles. So like I said, this is 12 inches, and for the common rafter, that's what you would set on the body of the square for every 12 inches of rise on the tongue. But the hip is an elongated common rafter. In this case, it's 13 inches for every 12. So we simply take the square, we slide the gauge down to 13 inches, but we leave the gauge on the tongue alone. And we draw the plate line first, leave the rafter tail long, draw the line, spin it, get your first level line, and full step line on the tongue. Now we need a partial step. With the common rafter it's 6 inches, but with the hip rafter it is elongated. So that means that for the common rafter, like I said, 6 inches. What is it for the hip? We swing it over and it's 6.5 inches. That's the purpose of this miter gauge. 6.5 inches, of course, half of 13. So this is 1.5 inches plus 5 inches. Line the 5 inches up with the full step and draw a new line. And that's the rafter length if there were no deductions at all. But we know there's a deduction. We went over it already. There's a deduction of 2 1/8, and then there's a setback, and combined they're 3 7/8. And that's in plan view, so that means that it's a 90 degrees to the plumb line. We mark it out at 3 7/8. Plumb down on the tongue of the square. And transfer that mark across the top. And mark out the other side, same way, right? As you would a hip rafter. And that'd be the short point of your 67.5 degree angle cuts. Or you can cut it square. You can line up the edge of the rafter with the leading edge of the commons, the edge of the hip. Leave that open right there. But it's not that great for nailing. This is a lot of nailing purchase here. With 2 16ths through there and so on and so forth. And that's it. Now, we have to address the height above plate line, which we discussed earlier. We have all hips are to center lines and valleys are to center lines. Common rafters, the center line and the side are the same. So the rafter length has already been established. Draw it down, and that will be where the notch is, of course, clearly. It's the heel stand that we're having an issue with. And so we know that it's 5/16 of an inch inboard. We call this a set forward inboard from the rafter length line. So I draw 5/16 of an inch. We plumb it like we did before. Draw a line, and then you can take the block, the rafter block, and put it on that new line. Line it up. Draw the bottom of the block, because that's just going to plane in top of hip to top of block. Or you can just measure down, same as a common rafter, 3.5 inches. Mark it out. Make sure that that goes all the way over to the rafter length line, and then all that gets cut out. That's essentially it, man. That's it. You use that as a template to mark out the others, and you're done. You wouldn't even use it as a template, really. You would cut all the 67.5 degree angles on the rafters, measure this one, stretch your tape, and make them all the same. So it's not a template in that you don't slide it alongside and use it as a marking gauge necessarily, unless you wanted to. Yeah, that's it. Just get it done that way.